So good afternoon and welcome everybody to the NETGEAR webinar. From a Midwich side of things, my name is Matt Skilton. I'm the Divisional Manager for Networking at Midwich. I'm really excited to be working with the team at NETGEAR. They're a key vendor for Midwich and an important part of our vision as we look to target the Pro AV applications. The team at NETGEAR will talk you through the range of switches available. The webinar will enable you to understand more about the products and how to take them to market. On the call from NETGEAR, we have Byron Bartlett, who is a distribution manager for UK and Ireland, Kieran Purdy, who is at AV Technical and Sales, and most importantly, we have two of the best presenters in the industry available for us today, in Laurence Massier and John Henkel. I do hope you enjoy the webinar. For any inquiries, please contact your account manager at Midwich. Alternatively, we do have a networking@midwich.com email address where the team and myself can help where needed. Thank you for joining. I guess it's over to you, Team NETGEAR.
Alrighty. I think we're live. All right.
Yes, we are, John. Thank you very much, and thanks to the entire Midwich team. It's a great honor for us at NETGEAR to be here today with you. So let's go over this. I promise it's going to be short, crisp, and entertaining because we have John Henkel with us. And also because in the middle of our short presentation, we want to go wild and fire up those switches in order to show you how you should implement and deploy your next and your next and your next AV over IP project. So without any further ado, let's start with John and go over all these Pro AV applications. John, do you see any exception why AV over IP wouldn't apply here?
Yeah, and that's the thing we talked about for years, really. Pro AV is everywhere, especially coming into NETGEAR from the AV side of things. People were asking me, what is Pro AV exactly? Because they're used to IT applications, things like that. This is all Pro AV and all a great place for AV over IP. I think the crowd probably has been reading about this for years anyway, but certainly, sports events with all the distributed screens around there, large event venues. We're going to get back to concerts soon if we aren't already. We're going to be there soon. So concerts, especially with audio in live events, that's all over IP, has been over IP for years, as a matter of fact. Education, we've all certainly understood that in the last year and a half or so about education being distributed. And as some classrooms come back, you have overflow classrooms or places where they might need an extra classroom now for some social distancing. That's got to go over IP. These are great distances apart. We're seeing a lot of applications in medical, actually, and those are growing and growing as they want high quality audio and video distributed again across a distance. That's on their network, and they can have some control over that for security and for some other purposes. With medical surgeries, you want to make sure that you don't have any latency. So they're using some really, really great technologies there in medical surgeries. High-end homes, as everybody's been spending a little more time at home, those that can afford to have been outfitting their home. And we're seeing a huge influx in residential applications, certainly for AV over IP. And then all the others. Retail signage has been that way for years. More kiosks, more signage these days, and wayfinding things. Airports as well for wayfinding, that's a big one. Corporate offices, we know that as everybody comes back to work, they're going to probably have more conference rooms and farther apart because you can't have as many people in a conference room. So more and more collaborative workspaces, UCC spaces are starting to adapt to AV over IP, no question. And then command and control centers hasn't been as big, I don't think, in general for AV over IP, but certainly is turning the corner. And there are some key partners in the industry that are using AV over IP in command and control rooms. So all of these, and then probably a few more we didn't even mention, really are great targets for Pro AV and AV over IP, Laurent.
Wow, John. So if I heard you well, it means that there's virtually no exception when it comes to a signal extension or switching between video sources and destinations like loudspeakers and TVs and displays. There's no exception. AV over IP can apply everywhere. Absolutely. So now let's see what is AV over IP, right, John? Because there's a lot of myth about it. And today, the first goal we want to achieve with you is to, explain what is AV over IP and why it does apply to, any kind of Pro AV applications. So see that diagram, it looks like busy in first place, but it's not. It's really well organized. On the left-hand side, you have all your video and audio sources, and each of them is attached to what we call a encoder or transmitter. So this is HDMI or other AV cabling, and this content is packetized. So these Ethernet packets, they can go through a network here at the center. And on the other side, you have all your destinations, your displays, your loudspeakers. Each single of them is going to be attached this time to a decoder or receiver, so that those Ethernet packets, they're back here, they are turned back into AV signals to your destinations. So here you have everything you need, because signal extension, switching, but also additional applications like multi-view, like KVM, like scaling, all these applications that used to require a hell of additional equipment like switchers or extenders. Now it's all software based, so video quality can be untouched to the 4K HDR 4x4x4 and lossless, and virtually no latency can be achieved depending on the type of AV or IP. But the point that I wanted to make, John, here is that, of course, at the center, there's the network. And this switch, John, got to work, right? Because what happens if there is any glitch on the switch fabric? Well, the entire AV experience can be ruined. So you are warned. Let's go over those two camps. And maybe, John, you want to educate us, because you are an AV savvy professional and you do that for maybe more than 20 years now. So can you tell us about those dominant camps between 1G and 10G? Does it really matter?
Yeah, and that's been a question forever, really. I had worked for other manufacturers of AV over IP equipment before this. And by the way, you can find me on LinkedIn. Please connect with me there if you'd like. And it was always this 10G versus 1G. And if we had a 1G, we're like, oh, 10G is bad. It's too much bandwidth, all this stuff. The truth is, it doesn't really matter. It depends on your application, right? But let's go over some of the things about these different types of different camps, if you will, of AV over IP. There is the 1 gigabit per second camp, and a lot of those codecs you're familiar with, H.264, H.265, VC2, and JPEG 2000. And some of these can look really, really good with very little latency overall, but something's going to suffer. You're going to have to give up something to get that compressed signal, that high bandwidth signal. It's an HDMI signal or something, down to fit over a 1 gig pipe. That's just the way it is. Something's got to give. So those are some of the traditional codecs for 1 gigabit, okay? And then for the 10 gigabit, you have SDVoE, which we're a founding member of, N2PIX and Pure 3. Pure 3 is what's used in the Extron nav system. So you have those systems that take a little more bandwidth and have a higher quality signal, lower latency, and a great color space still with HDR and things like that. And also at 60 frames per second. So you just got to figure out what your need is, really. What's the application? If it's a PowerPoint presentation, you probably don't need the high bandwidth. If it's live video like this, you're going to want to probably choose an SDVoE or N2PIX or Pure 3, a 10 gigabit codec to get that high quality video. So you have choices, and that's the great thing about AV over IP. The other cool thing for us is it's all going to run through a network switch, right? So NETGEAR switches are designed for all of these. It doesn't matter. We work with all types of AV over IP systems. That's not a proprietary like HD-Base-T, where it really is a point-to-point protocol. We could spend an hour or two on just that stuff, but this is the kind of overview of what AV over IP is, really. And that's the thing. One point I want to make, it's on there, I forgot to make. Once you're doing 1 gigabit Ethernet, once you're up over 10 streams, that's 10 gigabit. So you're still going to need a high power switch and high power infrastructure to handle all that, right, Laurent?
That's absolutely sure, John. And that's why we always say at NETGEAR that we definitely stay agnostic, right? Compressed, uncompressed, doesn't matter to us. It matters to you, because, you know, it really depends on the level of quality and latency you need to have in your AV application. But the common denominator for us is that all that requires bandwidth, and John is perfectly all right. It's all about, anyway, high bandwidth, because even 1G ends up to dozens of 10 gigabits, you know, at the core for perfect video distribution. All right, so now let me get you in front of this, because you know what? It is going so fast. NETGEAR started almost 10 years ago with the AV. At first, you know, with only a few manufacturers that were actually using the NETGEAR switches, saying, hey guys, your switches are good, and they work with our new application. But, you know, year after year, we actually really considered AV, and especially the Pro AV, as a new ecosystem, a new application, even a new business unit for NETGEAR, and it became extremely important. And doing that, we founded an alliance called SDVOE on the 10 gig Ethernet side. But since then, look at that, John. I believe we have almost 99% of the professional AV industry on that slide. And this slide tells you that NETGEAR today is the most recommended switch platform for Pro AV applications. And the reason is that we go through a very strict mutual certification between those vendors and NETGEAR, so that we have this equipment in our labs, they have our switches in their labs, and we make sure that our configurations, our profiles, you'll see that, are rock solid for your convenience, so that you stop wondering how to configure things. So did I explain that correctly, John? Do you want to mention anything about those big names?
Except it's already out of date, Laurent. I mean, we just did this probably a couple of days ago, and every day our team who's working with manufacturers says, oh, don't forget to add so-and-so. Oh, I got clearance from so-and-so. So it's really outstanding for us with those big names on there that have, you know, officially certified, or they're just really good partners. And some of these people also resell our switches too. They're so confident of us, and they're solidifying on only NETGEAR switches. And that's the key thing. They're realizing you don't have to try to futz with other switches and try to make them work. So all these people are really in our camp, and we're so thankful that they're choosing us, because we know we are the best. And it's nice to hear them say that too.
That's right, John. And that's why we are so pleased to be here and so honored to be invited by the great Midwich team in the UK, because many of those brands are at Midwich, right? So very glad to be here. And let's speed up now, because we want to get our hands dirty, right? So let's go and figure how to do all that. Well, I wanted to explain here that in addition to switchers, because I'm afraid, you know, at NETGEAR, that's what we do switches. But in addition to the hardware and the software, there's one component that is extremely important for the AV installations. That's the level of service and support that we want to provide to you. Okay, so we understood that, well, anytime, anywhere, you may need assistance, not only for the design, not only for the large complex projects, but for any kind of interoperability question, switch selection, configuration, troubleshooting. There will be always somebody in NETGEAR available to help you. And how it works, really simple. That's an email address, because you know that at this stage, when you have a live event or a D-Day, you don't have time to create a ticket on a portal. So just shoot an email to proavdesign@netgear.com, proavdesign@netgear.com. That's a simple email. And in a very short period of time, we have great AV/IT professionals everywhere in the world, but especially in the UK, with Kieran Purdy and Neil Smart, are two champions locally in your country, in your region. But we also have personnel in Germany, in France, in the US, in Asia Pacific, so that anytime, anywhere again, there will be somebody assigned to your project, not only for the design, but also for the configuration and also for troubleshooting. Because we know in the AV world, things happen. And that's why we want to provide that to you. So for us, it's even more important than the hardware and the software. All right, so maybe John, you want to explain how even further maybe our organization can go when it comes to AV.
Yeah, a little bit more on that, certainly. And I see a question. By the way, there is a Q&A part of this Teams meeting as well, and we'll try to get to those certainly as soon as we can. I know we're going to talk about AVB coming up, so Kieran's already on that, of course. But our commitment, as Laurent was talking about, is more than just giving you a product and selling that. So with that Pro AV Design Engineering Services team, that's number one. But also, we have a lifetime warranty for our products, next business day replacement. And we know that you are in the middle of something. So again, this team is available 24/7. And Laurent and the team can attest to that. They've had some long weekends and some overnights trying to get a job up and running. So whether it's our problem or not, if you think it's the network problem, we'll help you troubleshoot that and figure that out for sure. The other key part about that is we want to make sure ahead of time when you design that system that it is correct and is going to operate correctly and efficiently. So we'll want to help you select the right switches for that and design that. Because I know for a lot of AV people like myself, I don't know how to design a network. I can build a conference room, no problem. But for the network, I need a little help, and that's what that team can give you. So besides that, we're going to give you higher level support than just our consumer product level for NETGEAR. And we'll get you the right equipment you need. And if there is something that happens, we'll get that back to you next business day. So that's easy.
Thank you, John. So we covered the level of service that NETGEAR really wants to provide to you for AV installations. That's important for us. But now, well, maybe we can come back to the switching offering, right? Because I know that you can find switches, anywhere, including at Midwich, for little applications like control and data for £20 for 8 ports. That's true, and they will work very reliably for transmitting control or data. But when it comes to AV, it's not trivial. Transporting AV signals, audio and video, plus control on top, is really demanding. So no matter what, under this AV line umbrella today, we want to explain that we do have engineered switchers for AV installations, starting with the M4250 that I'm very impatient to fire up for you, and going all the way up to the 43 and the 4500 switches that were there a long time ago already, approved and certified and very robust for the super large installations. And with those 3 series, we can accommodate any install from 8 ports in a conference room all the way up to a gigantic headquarter installations with thousands of endpoints, maybe with NDI or Crestron NVX or any type of video, plus AVB, plus audio, Dante, and so on. So today, we would like to quickly introduce those M series that we called AV line, because these switchers are the switches that the NETGEAR Pro AV Engineering Services team is proficient with and will advise for your installation from 8 ports to literally thousands of them. Special quick mention for the PoE++. Maybe you don't know yet what that is. Power over Ethernet. It's, the power delivered to the node, because it's using the network cable between the switch and the device, but it's also powering the device. That's what we call power over Ethernet. You have a whole lot of encode decode units or PTZ cameras that are PoE powered, right? And the PoE++ is brand new. This is going above 30 watts. And these M4250 switches, they can go up to 90 watts. So, be ready for the future. You'll see huge loudspeakers and sound bars, powered by PoE really soon. So John, you did that video, so please walk through us. What do we see here?
Oh, I can't take credit for shooting that lovely product, but still, it helps show people, I think, what these really look like besides just the graphic image. These are gorgeous, as you can see. We've taken input from the industry to say what you guys wanted and what the integrators wanted and the end customers for that matter. So we've redesigned these switches from the ground up to make sure that they look awesome in an AV rack. I mean, they don't look like a traditional IT switch, which is exactly what you've had to deal with for years. A couple things we've noted about those really is the status in the front. The ports are in the back. So status in the front and status in the back as well, I should say. But all the ports and interconnects are in the back of the switch, which matches how a traditional AV rack is. And I heard some people talking online in some user group somewhere about this. If they wanted them in the front still, well, we give you the rack mount ears that you can reverse and rack mount it if you want to. So yes, we put the ports in the back, but if you want them in the front, not a problem. We give you those in the box as well. And we even recess that back from the front of the rack, so there's room for that little cable turn as well. So really thought about this for all kinds of installations. And in fact, there's also some mounting holes that are on the front and the back to put on a truss somewhere. They're threaded holes, they're M5, I believe it is. And they can also be used on a VESA mount, depends on how you want to say that, VESA. So we've really thoughtfully designed this chassis, I think, and it looks gorgeous, and we're pretty happy with that. So.
Oh, thank you, John. And you know what? I'm more impatient than ever because in exactly 2 minutes from now, we are going to fire up this one, okay, together. But before I do that, I wanted to share only two things that make those switches, the AV line switches at NETGEAR, completely different from anything else in the NETGEAR portfolio, and especially against anything else existing on the market today, and without any exception. So the first one is called NETGEAR IGMP Plus. And I'm pretty sure that, John, the first time ever you've seen that, you said, oh, not a big deal. That's, again, Laurent, who is trying to make things up. But believe me, IGMP is at the heart of AV over IP. For switching, IGMP is the protocol that is used for switches, but also for all those AV endpoints to manage the multicast, right? So that's the multicast protocol. And IGMP was deficient from the day one. IGMP was flooding the networks when it was not a single switch, but when you got more than 2 switches or 3 switches, you got to have a center, and that's called the carrier. And all the audio streams, all the video streams always have to be flooded to the carrier, because that's how IGMP works. And the only way to restrict that, to combat that before, was to go with way more complicated layer 3 routing techniques that maybe, John, you really don't want to know at all. So what we have done with IGMP Plus, I heard you, what we have done with IGMP Plus is that we modified it, we re-engineered it once for all, so that this deficiency is removed, so that whatever you want to do, 1 switch, 3 switches, 10 switches, 200 switches in a star system, or any kind of daisy chain topology, the multicast will stay local, right? You will not flood anything, and if and only if you have a client somewhere subscribing to one of those streams, then and only then that multicast stream will traverse the network. So that's called IGMP Plus, and that is the foundation of the AV line, because those switches, they talk with each other and they are intelligently managing IGMP multicast.
And this is why our switches work out of the box too, Laurent. Sorry, this and the next couple features, right? That's what we're known for now.
Right, and I was actually going to ask you this because, well, to be fair, we realized IGMP Plus almost 2 years ago, and John came in and John said that's not enough, right? So
yeah, we need to do more. Exactly.
So
always.
Two things, and this is really new, and I wanted really to show it to you. After IGMP Plus for automatic multicast, we said, well, what if the switches could be connected to each other without any configuration? So this new feature is called Auto Trunk. So it means that as soon as we have switches with some VLANs, some profiles for audio and video left and right, as soon as we are going to connect a cable in between those 2 switches, the VLAN propagation, the trunking, what we call in the IT world trunking for VLANs is completely automatic. So you can go one step further your automation, John. And the second thing, which is a sister feature, is that, of course, sometimes you need more than one link between switches. If you need to scale and add more bandwidth with more 1G links or more 10G links, for instance, for video between switches, link aggregation or stacking was another complex configuration thing to do before. So John said that's enough. Our customers, you guys, should be able to take those two switches, connect as many cables you want in between, and boom, you have your link aggregation done dynamically. So if you recap that, John, IGMP Plus works out of the box, auto trunking, automatic VLAN propagation works out of the box, and auto lag for automatic link aggregation out of the box. With those three, John, don't you think switching is not the most important part of an AV job, right? I think that now you can focus on what is really important. That's the AV.
And that's the thing. You think it isn't the most important part, and it's just the switch, but it actually is, right? Because everything has to run through the switch, so it has to be efficient. And people are so for the salespeople on this call, people who are like me maybe and don't know all the technical details. You don't have to remember all the details of this. The important thing is to tell IT people, those who are configuring it, we can auto configure basically, and we can set everything up and make it work out of the box efficiently. So when you're connecting things like this, star topology, which is not that difficult actually, you can see you have your local switches and you have interconnects between them called uplinks. And you use our auto lag, auto trunk, and IGMP Plus, and you just plug them in, right, Laurent? And that's it, basically.
That's it with your American English. That's right. So this is exactly that. Now we just need to learn how to tell the switches, well, I need a blue section on my switch for my video units. Here, I believe those are Harman AMX units, but it can be ZV, can be Crestron NVX or NDI, any video units, right? So I need a blue section and I need an orange section for my audio. I believe here we have some Audinate Dante IOs, but can be AVB or anything else. So what I would like to do now with you all is to fire up this demo, because we talked about the service and support that the NETGEAR local team and the Midwich local team in the UK want to provide to you. We talked about the level of commitment from the global NETGEAR organization. We went through those line of switches together and we said, well, we have AV line switches. We have switches that were engineered for AV. And those switches, they are good because they are fairly automatic. The multicast is good. It's almost intuitive. It's almost totally automatic, right? But now you need to know how to configure for Dante, for NDI, and for AVB. And that's what I would like to do with you today. And John, you probably have seen that already, but I'm pretty sure you will react often. So what I'm doing right now, I am using a web browser and I'm going to connect to one of those switches, which is a 24-port switch, all right? So on the welcome page of that switch on the right-hand side, we have a button called the main user interface. And this is the common NETGEAR GUI that you will find across almost all switch series, okay? But that's where things get complicated because it's all about IGMP, DSCP, PTP. Actually, that's fairly complicated. So the AV user interface is on the left-hand side. Let's log in and see what is going on. And maybe we can use the chat button. If you guys on the call, you want to see anything special, if you have any AV application, AV node that created issues to you in the past, please use the chat box. We'll connect that. So the welcome page is actually very simple. This is just a little bit of information about the switch, the serial number, and all this. Let's hide the legends. And well, the thing that, John, you liked the most on that page is that fan control, right? Because you can tell the switch, you know what? I'm in a conference room today, or actually that's your recording studio, John.
Yeah.
You want to shut down the fans, you know?
No fans.
Yeah, so that's what I have done today. But the quiet mode is good too. With the quiet mode, you can profit from the entire PoE budget, which are huge on those models, and still very low dB, very low noise. But the fanless mode is actually perfect when you really got to be silent. All right, so the overview page, that's pretty much all we got to do, manage the fans. Now let's go to the network profiles. And instead of manipulating complex protocols and settings, let me disclose this. The AV line switchers at NETGEAR don't want you to spend time on those protocols anymore. We want you to just locate the type of AV over IP you got to deploy today, starting from audio DALI to any kind of other audio or video application. So let's say we have a job coming up right now, John, and let's say we want to do some video on the first ports and some audio together on the same switch, right? And for the video, well, there is some hype going now on with NDI, because NDI is, becoming popular. That's just one type of AV over IP. But look at that. NVXs, AMXs, ZV, Aurora, Kramer, Liberty AV, Dante Video, SDVoE. This is the canned video profile that is approved and certified by all these manufacturers. So today we have NDI to go. The first thing we want to do is then select that video profile and tell the switch, look, I am going to use the 8 first ports because I need to plug my new NDI cameras, TriCasters, and other NDI sources and destinations. Select the ports, give it a name, maybe John's NDI, because I know, John, you love cameras. You will maybe want to specify a VLAN. It's always good to segregate AV traffic so that they don't interfere, right, with each other. So maybe let's use the VLAN 10 and pick a color. And I personally know that my friends, John, like the light blue color. It's actually a color.
Yeah, but you can choose whatever you want. That's the cool part. It's whatever.
Right. So we just said 8 ports for NDI. In the VLAN 10, paint it in blue. Let's save it. Instantly, you have your 8 third ports that are configured. And obviously for NDI, you can go to NewTek website, you can download the white paper, you can learn how to tweak the IGMP snooping, the querier, all those settings, but it's all done here. And the most important thing, it's certified for you, so you can confidently go and deploy NDI. Now, let's go to the second job. I mean, that's the same job, but the second part. It's audio, right? And well, we got a question on the chat box about AVB. See, AVB is one of these protocols. That's probably the most demanding protocol. It's so much demanding that you have a whole lot going on with AVB. So this is the reason why this profile is the only one requiring a license. So a little bit more money, British pounds, required to run AVB because there's a lot of IP. So AVB license is required. We are just going to go to the license part of that UI, and we are going to copy and paste the NETGEAR license key that was delivered for that switch. All right. So when the AVB license is in, we can find the AVB profile. Let's select it. And despite the fact that AVB is super complicated, I'm going to say, well, no, I want to do the 8 next ports. This time I want to color them in yellow, right? And this is going to be my AVB. I know that you can find BiAmp in Midwich, for instance. BiAmp is one of the most famous AVB proponent on the market, for instance. So my AVB for Biamp, maybe. All right. And let's segregate that traffic. Usually, AVB guys, they like the VLAN 2, but no worries. You can use any VLAN you want. Okay, VLAN 2, save it. And, well, John, this is over.
There it is, done. Okay, thanks a lot. We're good to go. See? One more point about AVB real quick, if I may. Sorry. The Avenue certification you might have heard of, or your customers might have heard of. Avenue is a certification body for AVB to make sure that it really, really works. And we've been working with them to make sure all of these new M4250 switches do pass that certification. So that's a new thing. We haven't announced that publicly yet, but we're going to. And that's a really big hurdle for us to have passed, Laurent. Good job.
Yes, thank you. But that's only the beginning, because we know that with AVB, next you have the, Biamp and L Acoustics and Meyer, and you have a lot of large manufacturers, and NETGEAR is going through the mutual certification process with Biamp as we speak, and we will do so with all other AVB manufacturers so that you can confidently use AVB. But yes, we did not configure MSRP, MRP. You know, it's actually canned and Avenue certified configuration, AVB and Milan, right? So Milan or Milan, whatever the pronunciation, it's the same certification for us. All right. So we covered the AV GUI. Did we have, do the switches talk to each other? Dante requires only one IGMP querier. That's a good question from Philip on the chat box. And the answer is yes, Philip, because behind this, for instance, John's NDI profile, or we can put a Dante profile, of course, that the multicast is configured, of course. And you heard about IGMP Plus. So when you use this configuration, the IGMP Plus magic is at work. And the switches will elect one querier, because it got to be one, right? One only. And the other switches will be talking to that querier. So IGMP Plus organizes that so that you have one querier and the other switches in the non-querier state, so that you can have a unified IGMP domain for you, Dante. All right. Well, that's what I got. And now I want to, just tell you that we did not want today to show all the SKUs and all the tables for 4250. You have dozens of options, 8 ports, 24 ports, 48 ports, 10G. That doesn't matter, right? You can go to Midwich and they will guide you through this NETGEAR portfolio. Today, the role and the goal we got with John was really to explain, that when it comes to AV, you need to select a switching platform, because the network fabric is super important. This is at the center of your AV experience, and NETGEAR would be extremely glad and honored to collaborate with you, with Midwich, in order to successfully deploy your next projects. Well, thank you for your attention. I think it is a good time to take the final questions.
Yeah, we're here. So Stump, it's usually what we call Stump Laurent. We try to do that. So if you know something about AV over IP and had some configuration problems before with the switches that are live here, Laurent can tackle anything for you. So if you want to throw out some sticky situation you went into or something else you're not sure of, now is the time to do that. We're here live. We can do that. But as Laurent said, we do have all the details, of course, for you on our website. netgear.com/proav is the place to go for all of that stuff, for the M4250s, the 43s, even the 4500, the 100 gig switches. You can find all the info there. Of course, your Midwich team has all the info as well, and they can help you figure out what's the right solution for you as well. And then the email address you have there again from before, proavdesign@netgear.com. But we're here. If you have any questions, even just general AV over IP stuff, please ask away. We're here for you.
Thank you, John. And because I have 1 minute, maybe, I promised to the NETGEAR UK team that I would actually just say a few words about this quarter. There is a great opportunity on those AV line switchers, 16-port multi-gig, 48-port 10G fiber, and even the aggregators, as they are called, for 40G and 100G. Those SKUs are actually under deep promotion. So reach out to the Midwich team, to your account manager at Midwich, so that they can guide you. There is a lot of good opportunities this quarter. Even when there are shortage on the market, you can still find good pricing, I can tell you, with NETGEAR and Midwich. Well,
30%, that's a fair amount on these switches. That's a huge discount. Usually you see like a 10% or maybe 20 perhaps, but excuse me, up to 30%. That's a great thing to take advantage of for sure.
So did we exhaust all the questions on the QA box? Yeah.
So,
all right.
That's a good thing. So I want to add one quick thing too. I know that for myself, being hesitant for AV over IP is what I'm feeling in the industry. And it's taken off in quite a few places, but still people are kind of reluctant for that. We have training available as well for some of these concepts. You heard us talk about IGMP or some of the star topology, things like that. There's a netgear.academy website. So netgear.academy. You can go there and sign up for free training. We have a couple of courses there. We're going to be expanding that over the coming months for some just general small, medium business kind of networking concepts. You know, what are VLANs, things like that too. So you can sign up for a course there and learn a little bit more about that. Also, Avixa, of course, is a great place to get that. Oh, and the course we have on our netgear.academy is worth 15 Avixa credits. Don't know how we got that. It's awesome. They recognize there's some really good value there in that content. So especially for AV integrators who've heard about some of these concepts, I think that's a good place to go for sure to get some more information. And you'll find all kinds of other webinars where Laurent and I are talking about these products. I don't remember if this is going to be recorded to replay later on, but that's another resource as well. Our YouTube channel. There's all kinds of resources to find to help you through some of this transition to AV over IP, because it's coming for sure. It's just a matter of when, I think.
Well, thank you, John. And that was again a great invitation. Thanks to the Midwich team. We were glad, John and I, to represent NETGEAR, and looking forward to collaborating with you all. Thank you.
Take care, everybody. Thanks so much for having us.